When Ethan and Marissa Cole bought the old Victorian house on Maple and Ridge Street, they couldn't believe their luck. 3 bedrooms, 2 fireplaces, a wide oak staircase, and a full basement, all for less than half the price of anything else in the neighborhood. The realtor had smiled nervously when they signed the papers. "It's a beautiful place," she said, "though some people around here think it's haunted." Ethan laughed. "That's fine," he said, "as long as the ghosts pay rent." Marissa didn't laugh. She'd been quiet the whole tour, trailing her fingers along the wallpaper that peeled like old skin. On their first night, she told Ethan she couldn't sleep because she heard something from below. A faint mechanical sound, like static or whispering. Ethan blamed the old pipes. "Basements breathe," he said. But deep down she knew what she heard wasn't the house. It was something in the house. A few weeks later, while cleaning the basement, Ethan discovered something strange. The space smelled of mildew and dust, with cobwebs that hung like lace curtains from the ceiling. At the far end, behind an old water heater, he noticed a patch of wall that didn't match the rest. Newer bricks, poorly laid. He tapped it with his crowbar. It sounded hollow. A few swings later, the bricks crumbled apart, revealing a narrow cavity. Inside, covered in dust, sat a metal trunk, dark with rust. He pried it open and froze. Inside were VHS tapes, bundled with a strip of tape marked Sanderson Home Recordings. There were porcelain doll parts, cracked faces, empty eye sockets, and one Chucky doll sitting upright, its plastic hands resting on its knees. The doll's left eye had a jagged crack running through it, and on its chest a piece of masking tape read, "Property of J. Sanderson, do not move." Ethan called upstairs. "Hey, Riss, you gotta see this." She came down reluctantly, clutching her mug. The air felt heavier as she descended. When she saw the doll, she took a step back. "Put it back, Ethan, please, I don't like it." "It's just old movie junk," he said, smiling. "Probably belonged to the last guy." Marissa crossed her arms. Then maybe it should have stayed with him. That night, Ethan decided to test something. He worked with home security systems, so he had spare cameras lying around. He set one up in the basement facing the shelf where the doll now sat. "Let's see if our ghost likes the spotlight," he joked. At 3:12 a.m., his phone buzzed, motion detected. He didn't check it until morning. Over breakfast, he opened the footage casually and spilled his coffee across the table. The doll had moved. It had been sitting upright when he left it. Now, in the video, it was facing the wall. No sign of anyone entering, no cuts, no flicker. Just one frame to the next, a change in position. He showed Marissa. "You're telling me it moved on its own?" she asked. "Or someone broke in," Ethan said. But there was no sign of forced entry. They decided to reset the camera, this time adding a second one pointed at the door, and they spread flour across the basement floor to catch footprints. The second night, they barely slept. Marissa lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The sound came again, faint static, like a TV that had lost signal. Then, around 2:40 a.m., the sound of a light tap, tap, tap from below. Ethan grabbed his phone and opened the live camera feed. The image was fuzzy, gray static rippling across the screen, until, for 1 second, the frame cleared. The doll was not on the shelf anymore. He raced downstairs, turning on every light. The doll was lying face down in the middle of the floor. In the flour were small round indentations, too small to be human, too perfect to be random. They led halfway across the room and stopped. When he picked up the doll, something sharp pricked his finger. There was a thin metal wire sticking out of its hand. A bead of blood appeared. He dropped it. "Enough," Marissa whispered from the stairs, trembling. "Get rid of it, please." He nodded. They sealed it in a garbage bag and left it by the curb before sunrise. By afternoon, the garbage truck had come and gone. The bag was gone too. Ethan felt relief until he went to the basement later to shut off the lights. The Chucky doll was sitting on the same shelf again. It looked cleaner. Its cracked eye had been wiped free of dust, and across its chest, written in the same shaky handwriting, was a fresh strip of tape. "Don't move me again." Ethan stumbled backward. "Marissa!" he yelled, but she refused to come down. She was already packing. "We're leaving," she said. "Now!" But Ethan's curiosity was stronger than his fear. Before they left, he set up 3 cameras around the doll and left them recording through the night. At 2:41 a.m., all 3 feeds glitched simultaneously. The static lasted for several seconds and then movement. The doll was standing. In one frame, its head tilted slightly to the right as though listening. Then its body shifted forward, one small step at a time. The sound came through the audio feed, faint scraping of plastic against concrete. Marissa woke to the noise from the monitor upstairs. When she looked at the screen, she screamed. The doll was facing the camera directly now, its cracked eye catching the dim basement light, the reflection glowing unnaturally bright. Its mouth began to move, slowly, mechanically, the corners stretching wider than plastic should allow. A voice came through the audio, deep and layered, almost childlike. "Want to play again, Ethan?" The lights in the house flickered. The camera feed froze, then black. The next morning, the basement was empty. The doll, the trunk, the tapes, all gone. Only one camera remained, lying on its side, still recording static. Ethan called the sheriff, but the report ended as unsubstantiated disturbance. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of anything out of place. They left the house that afternoon and never went back. 3 months later, a pawn shop in the next county listed a strange item online. Vintage Chucky doll with VHS tape found. The owner told a local reporter that the box had appeared outside his shop one morning, wrapped in old newspaper. He played 10 seconds of the tape out of curiosity. It was grainy footage of a basement and a voice whispering something unintelligible before the screen cut to black. When asked what was written on the tape's label, he looked pale and refused to answer. Later that week, someone noticed the listing had been taken down. But a photo still circulates online, a blurry screenshot from that listing, showing the tape resting beside the doll. On its label, scrawled in red ink, were 2 words: "Don't rewind." When the delivery van stopped in front of the small private museum on Onslow Square, Eleanor Briggs had no idea that what sat in that wooden crate would end her career, her peace, and maybe even her sanity. She was 63 years old, thin and soft-spoken, with decades of experience cataloging antiques for institutions that had long since forgotten her name. In retirement, she had opened her own place, a little gallery called Curiosities of the 20th Century. It was her sanctuary, a quiet building filled with harmless relics, old cameras, movie posters, wind-up toys that no longer worked, and dolls so old they looked like they might crumble if you breathed on them. The crate was unmarked except for a faded custom sticker from Los Angeles and a single type note that read simply, "Donation, film prop, 1989. She signed for it and wheeled it inside. The wood smelled like mold and metal. When she pried the lid off, she found a doll packed in straw, a Chucky doll, the same kind from those horror movies she never watched. It was larger than she expected, almost life-sized, with faded denim overalls and eyes made of glass, not plastic. The left eye was cracked, a hairline fracture cutting through the iris like a bolt of lightning. At first she thought it was funny, a horror prop among her other curiosities. She cleaned it carefully, wiped away the grime, and set it upright on her work table. When she turned away to log the item, The doll tipped slightly to one side. She straightened it, blaming uneven legs. But when she looked again a minute later, the head seemed tilted, ever so slightly, toward her. She laughed it off, cataloged it under miscellaneous film memorabilia, and placed it inside a glass display case at the center of her collection. Visitors would love it. They always did with anything that carried a bit of menace. That night she dreamed of children laughing in an empty hallway, their voices echoing off marble floors. One voice, lower than the rest, whispered, "You finally brought me back." She woke with a start to the sound of something tapping. 3 slow taps, like knuckles on glass. She turned on the light. Silence. When she went downstairs in the morning, there were fingerprints on the inside of the Chucky doll's case. She cleaned them, scolding herself for being careless. Maybe she'd smudged it while placing the doll inside. But by the 3rd morning, she found new prints again. Smaller this time, streaked downward, as if something inside had tried to claw its way out. Eleanor called her assistant Nadia, a 25-year-old history student who helped catalog exhibits on weekends. When Nadia arrived, Eleanor told her everything. Nadia smirked. "You're letting the spooky stories get to you," she said. "This place creaks like a coffin. Of course you hear things." Still, she agreed to stay overnight as a show of support. They installed 2 cameras, one facing the case, one watching the entrance. They made tea, joked about ghosts, and waited. At midnight, the heating system groaned and settled. The air grew colder. Nadia checked the live feed on her tablet. "All quiet," she said. But Eleanor kept glancing at the display case. It was barely visible from her office, just a faint reflection of light against glass. At 2:57 a.m., she heard a sound that made her heart stop. A sharp crack, like glass under pressure. They rushed out together. The museum was dark, the only light from the green exit sign. The case was fogging up from the inside, condensation spreading across the glass. Nadia raised her phone's flashlight. Inside, the Chucky doll's face was pressed against the glass, its cracked eye inches from the surface. Then, tap. Another sound. This one rhythmic, deliberate. "Jesus Christ," Nadia whispered, stepping back. "Don't touch it," Eleanor said, her voice trembling. The lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. In that blackness came a soft, childlike giggle that seemed to echo from the ceiling. Nadia screamed. Something heavy crashed. When power returned, the case was shattered and empty. Police arrived an hour later to find Eleanor dazed on the floor, bleeding from small cuts, and Nadia missing. The glass had blown outward. There were no footprints, only dozens of tiny impressions scattered in a half circle, like doll shoes pressed into dust. They found no sign of forced entry, no fingerprints but Eleanor's. They searched the alley behind the museum, the storage rooms, the basement. Nothing. For the next 3 days, Eleanor stayed in a hospital room under observation. The doctors said trauma. The police said theft. The media called it the Doll Museum mystery. But Eleanor knew none of those explanations fit. The security system had backed up to the cloud. When detectives finally reviewed the footage, the file was corrupted. Every second of it filled with static except for one frame. The doll, standing upright outside the shattered case, head tilted as if listening, fog still rising around it. After her discharge, she returned to the museum. It felt wrong, too still, too silent. The smell of glass cleaner hung in the air. The janitor had removed the case entirely. She stood there for a long time staring at the empty space, then locked the door and went upstairs to her apartment above the gallery. That night, she dreamed of a girl whispering through glass. Help me get out." When she woke, her bedroom window was open, and on the windowsill sat a single plastic shoe, the kind used on dolls. She put the museum up for sale the next morning. 2 weeks later, a security guard in Croydon filed a report of a break-in at a private storage facility. His name was Thomas Green, 60 years old, former police officer. In his statement, he wrote that around 2 a.m., he heard a child laughing in the dark. Thinking teenagers had slipped in, he followed the sound between the aisles of metal lockers. The laughter stopped. When he turned the corner, his flashlight caught movement. Something small, crouched by locker 17. For a second, he thought it was a child. Then it looked up at him. He dropped the light. It rolled across the concrete, casting wild shadows. He said the last thing he saw before everything went black was a small face with red hair and a split-eye grin whispering, "Don't lock me up again." Thomas woke 2 hours later, lying against the wall, unhurt but trembling. The footage from that night showed only static. One frame remained, a silhouette of a doll standing near locker 17. Behind it, scrawled in black marker, were 3 words: "I found her." News spread again. Paranormal forums speculated the museum doll had resurfaced. Someone mentioned a man named Jonathan Sanderson, an eccentric film technician from the late 1980s, rumored to have stolen props from movie sets for personal study. His house in Ohio had burned down years earlier. His remains were never officially identified. Eleanor tried to ignore the news. She moved to her sister's home in Cornwall, started medication, and stopped answering calls from reporters. But one morning, a brown parcel arrived with no return address. Inside was a VHS tape labeled "Museum Footage. Do not rewind." She hesitated, then slid it into an old player she kept for archiving. The tape crackled to life, showing grainy footage of her own gallery. The timestamp read 03:03 a.m. The camera panned slowly across the room, her voice, faint in the background, saying, "Is anyone there?" Then static. When the image returned, the doll was standing before the camera, closer than before. Its eyes blinked. She ejected the tape, shaking. The smell of burnt plastic filled the room. Later that day, she took the tape to the police, but when they tried to play it, it was blank. A month later, a collector in Manchester uploaded a YouTube video titled, "Original Chucky Prop, Real Deal." The thumbnail showed the doll sealed in a cracked glass case, identical to the one from Eleanor's exhibit. The video lasted 47 seconds before cutting to static. In the comments, one viewer wrote, "Pause at 0:22, it moves." If you pause it there, you can indeed see something in the reflection. Not the cameraman, not the collector, but a woman standing in the background with short gray hair and eyes wide open, like she's screaming. The account that uploaded the video was deleted within a week, but the clip re-uploads everywhere. Reddit threads call it the Briggs footage. Some claim if you watch it after 3 a.m., you can hear tapping on your window exactly 3 times. Eleanor Briggs was found dead 6 months later in her Cornwall cottage. The cause was listed as cardiac arrest. On her nightstand sat a glass display dome, empty, but for a single handwritten note beneath it. "Thank you for keeping me safe." Police photographed it as evidence, though none of them remember touching the note afterward. The dome was placed in evidence storage, locker 17. 2 nights later, the storage facility burned down. Fire crews reported hearing laughter echoing from inside long after the flames were out. No survivors, no artifacts recovered. But a week later, a package arrived at an antique store in Bristol. It contained a Chucky doll, old, cracked, and smelling faintly of smoke, and a short message attached with twine. Display with care, do not lock the case. The shopkeeper sold it the same day to a man who refused to give his name. CCTV footage shows him wearing gloves and smiling as he walked out into the rain. He looked directly at the camera once before disappearing into the fog. For a single frame, his reflection showed something behind him. A small red-haired figure walking just out of the light. Jonathan Sanderson was an obsessed man. Before anyone ever called the doll cursed, before it sat behind glass or inside a museum, it belonged to him. Back in 1988, he was a special effects model maker for a small Los Angeles film studio, the kind that rented out prosthetic limbs and animatronic puppets to horror directors working on shoestring budgets. Sanderson lived alone in a workshop that smelled of burnt latex and solvent. He was talented, but what he loved most wasn't the craft, it was control. He believed that if you built something realistic enough, you could make it live. When production on a new slasher film wrapped, he kept one prototype that no one wanted. A Chucky doll with a damaged servo in its jaw and mismatched glass eyes. He told the crew it was spare parts, but the next day he filed an expense report for bio-motion testing materials. No one asked what that meant. For weeks he tinkered with it. He replaced the wires, sewed new skin, whispered to it while he worked. Neighbors said he talked to himself late at night, calling someone buddy. Then, one evening in 1990, a fire tore through the building. The cause was listed as electrical fault. Sanderson's body was never found, just a half-melted doll sitting in the ashes, its cracked eye unburned. Decades later, that same doll resurfaced in Ohio, in a locked trunk hidden behind a basement wall. The couple who found it left in terror. From there, it traveled to London, sealed inside a glass case in Eleanor Briggs's museum. And after that, no one can trace it clearly. It vanished into rumor. Until 2021. A man named Ryan Cole bought an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Manchester. He called himself a collector of cinematic history and ran a small YouTube channel where he unboxed movie props. His followers loved his enthusiasm until the day he uploaded a thumbnail that simply read, "The Real Chucky Doll, Unboxing Tonight." The stream began at 9 p.m. Ryan's camera showed a dusty work table and a wooden crate. Inside was the same doll, blue overalls, cracked glass eye, faint burn marks around the mouth. He laughed nervously. "Smells like smoke," he joked. "Guess this guy's been through hell." The chat filled with laughing emojis. He set the doll upright beside him and started reading the attached note. "Display with care, do not lock the case." "Creepy," he said. Then the lights flickered. For the next few nights, he used the doll as a prop in the background of his videos. Subscribers noticed subtle things. Its head turned a little between cuts. Its arms seemed to move. He swore he hadn't touched it. One viewer commented, "Pause at 4:12, it blinks." Ryan laughed it off until he woke at 3:03 a.m. to the sound of his motion alarm. When he checked the feed, the doll was standing in the middle of the room. He froze, watching. It stayed there for nearly a minute, then slowly tilted its head toward the camera. The footage ended when his phone battery died. He told himself it was sleep deprivation, a prank by friends. But when he went downstairs the next morning, every other prop, rubber masks, latex limbs, mannequins, had been rearranged into a circle around the doll. In the center lay his laptop, screen cracked, a single word scrawled across it in black marker, "Play." Ryan started researching. He found forum threads about the Briggs footage, screenshots of the museum case, references to a man named Jonathan Sanderson. One late-night post caught his attention. The doll's eye isn't glass, it's quartz. It was melted around something organic. He zoomed into the old photo and realized the crack in the eye wasn't a fracture, it was a vein. That night, he recorded a final video titled, "The Collector's Curse." The stream lasted 19 minutes. He explained that he was going to destroy the doll live to prove it was just a toy. He set it on the table, poured lighter fluid over it, and struck a match. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the flame bent sideways as if blown by a breath from the doll itself. Ryan screamed, the camera fell. The feed continued audio only, a scraping sound, then his voice whispering, "Who's there?" followed by a child's laugh and a short burst of static. The screen went black. The video was deleted within the hour, but fragments resurfaced on mirror sites. People claim if you boost the audio, you can hear a second voice repeating, "You built me, you finished me." Police entered the warehouse 2 days later. Ryan was gone. The only thing left on the table was the doll, untouched, and a sheet of paper covered in charcoal dust. A drawing of a man with burn scars holding hands with a small figure that looked exactly like the doll. In the corner were the initials JS. Investigators sealed the scene, but one of them, Detective Harper, took a selfie inside for evidence. Later, while reviewing her photos, she noticed something impossible. In every image, the doll's eyes were facing the lens, even when her back was turned. She quit the force 3 months later. The evidence was sent to a private archive for storage, Locker 17. The same number that appeared in the Croydon incident years earlier. In 2022, the archive caught fire during the night shift. Security cameras went dark minutes before the alarms. When firefighters arrived, the sprinklers had never activated. Among the debris, they found twisted metal shelving and one intact object, a blackened glass display dome protecting a doll that showed no signs of heat damage. Inside the dome, etched into the soot, were words traced by a small hand. "He's home." No one claimed ownership. The doll disappeared during transfer. Online, rumors grew. Collectors reported anonymous emails offering Sanderson's original creation. Every buyer who responded had their accounts hacked. One man in Berlin claimed his webcam turned on by itself and filmed him sleeping. Another said he received a parcel with no return label containing a VHS tape that played nothing but static and a faint voice whispering, "Playtime's forever." 2 months later, a new channel appeared on YouTube under the name The Real Sanderson. It uploaded one video, just a minute of darkness, then a child's giggle and a single frame of the doll sitting in a glass case. In that reflection stood a man's silhouette holding a camera. Reverse image search identified the outline as Ryan Cole. The account vanished the next day. Now, if you walk through certain antique markets in London or Manchester, you might see it. A booth with no vendor, a single case lit from beneath, and inside, a red-haired doll staring out through cracked glass. If you lean close, you'll notice the reflection isn't yours. It's a burned man smiling behind you. They say the curse was never about the doll itself. It was about the people who tried to own it. Sanderson wanted to build something that would live forever, and he did. So if you ever see a Chucky doll with a faint fracture running through its left eye, don't touch it. Don't film it. And whatever you do, don't try to collect it. Because once you do, you'll start to hear that same whisper at 3:03 a.m., right behind you, right next to your ear. Soft, playful, and patient. Wanna play again? If you made it this far, thank you for spending your night with us. If these stories gave you chills, there's plenty more waiting. Don't forget to subscribe to Night Fear Stories for new terrifying tales every single night. Sleep well, if you can.